Welcome to the Business End. Today we're joined by someone who spent 3 decades inside rugby's most demanding systems, as a player who delivered in finals, and as a coach who's built attacks in environments where pressure exposes everything. Alex King joined Wasps in 1996 and became the heartbeat of one of English rugby's most successful eras. 4 Premiership titles, 2 Heineken Cups, 10 finals. In 2003, he was the man of the match in the Premiership final, scoring 24 points as Wasps dismantled Gloucester. Weeks later, an injury in an England warm-up match ended his World Cup hopes, and he watched from home as his teammates lifted the Webb Ellis Cup. His coaching career has been built across cultures and expectations. Clermont, where he helped deliver a first-ever top 14 title. Northampton Saints, where he was central to a Premiership and Challenge Cup double. Montpellier, where he reached another top 14 final. Gloucester, where he worked alongside former teammates to rebuild attack structures, and Wales, where he stepped into a national programme under Warren Gatland, a role that ended in January 2025 after a disappointing 2024 campaign. Alex has operated inside systems at their peak and at their most fragile. He's seen what holds under pressure and what fractures when results stop coming. Alex, it's great to have you on the Business End. Welcome.
Hi guys, lovely to be here.
Welcome, Alex. Welcome. Let's crack on and get into it. Life, business, rugby. Setbacks happen. Let's talk about pre-World Cup, August 2003. You played against Wales in a World Cup warm-up, picked up an injury, and never made the plane to the World Cup. A few months later, many of your Wasps teammates were parading the trophy through London. What actually went on inside you, in your mind during that period, and how did it affect the way you approached the game and your career thereafter?
Great question, Fitzy. So 2003, sort of bittersweet, really. Gats and Sean Edwards had sort of come into Wasps environment, and we had an amazing 2003 season as a club. We won the Premiership, we won the Challenge Cup, and I went on tour to Australia and New Zealand with England and was on the bench for England against Australia in Melbourne, a test match we won. So as a preparation for England before the World Cup in the autumn, it was fantastic. Having gone down to the Southern Hemisphere to beat the 2 big teams down there away from home, I think it gave a real sense of confidence to the group of players led by Martin Johnson that we could do something special in the autumn. We then reconvened at Penny Hill Park for 2 months, the most intense, brutal training the rugby team at that time I'd ever seen, I think. And I was picked to play against Wales for England in Cardiff on August the 25th, 2003. And I know that because it was my mother's birthday and she was there. And I had a pretty good game. I missed 1 or 2 kicks, which, in reflection in the game, you're thinking, oh, Johnny would never have missed them and I've missed them. Is that my selection, compromised? And then the last 5 minutes, I got caught in a tackle. My knee blew out. And I knew pretty much straight away that I wasn't going to go to Australia, picked or not. So, fast forward 2 months, I had an operation. I did my rehab, and I actually played on the Friday night for Wasps against Gloucester. And just the pure sense of happiness about being back on the field and being able to do what I love doing was huge. And the next day was the World Cup final, obviously in Sydney. England won, and there's part of you that thinks, if only it could have been different. But then immensely proud of, mates that are, living their best life. And we had 5 of them at the club. And I had other friends as well in the squads who I was tight with as well. So there's 2 ways you can go. You can be bitter and regret things, or you can, live in the moment and understand that, that time wasn't for me. Subsequently, that 2003-4 season was incredible for Wasps. We won the double. We beat Toulouse in the final, that famous final where Pochettino mucks up in the corner and Howley scores. And I remember the end of season dinner, I got asked a question regarding, did I regret not being part of the 3 World Cup winning team? And of course, I'd love to have been there. But I remember the answer I gave, and it stuck with me, that you be grateful for what you have got, because I just think being bitter or regretting things, you can just live in a dark place. It's easier said than done. We're all human beings and we all have moments where we wish things had happened. But look, we won the double with an amazing group of people I'm friends with now, 22 years later. And I think sometimes getting knocked back in your career, whatever that's business or sport, learning resilience is probably the greatest skill you can learn, because bad times will happen. The life will throw you, a curveball at some point. And I think confidence comes from being able to deal with those situations, not from never having to deal with them. And I see it with my children now, rather than, sorting out every problem for them. I think it's important that they can go through, tough times, not too tough, but certainly tough times when you're a kid. And I think if you're sorting out all their problems for them, I think they then will lack the capacity to deal with that later on in their life. So I think it's important to get to speak to people and get help if you need it. But I think learning to be resilient and coming through those times is a hugely important lesson in life.
No, very much so. Sorry, go on, Mo.
So before the show, you gave a great answer to this question, but mentally, how did you deal with it? Like, you what steps did you take what were you focused on when the World Cup was going on?
When I was, when you're a pro athlete, all you want to do is be back on the field. So I think you just take it in step by step. It's a bit of a cliche, but I just concentrated every day on the best rehab I could do. Once the rehab was done, like, could I get back on the field as quickly as possible? When's the next fixture? And we were lucky, not lucky, but the guys who were part of that World Cup squad, those 5 guys I mentioned, Lawrence, Joe, Stuart, Josh, and Joe, these guys were world-class players. So they came back and they wanted to achieve something special with the club as well. You look at Lawrence; he won the World Cup, the Heineken Cup, and the Premiership all in one season. I mean, it's never been done by. Well, it's done by all 5 of them. Sorry, but it's an extraordinary feat, really.
Yeah.
And the rest of the guys who watch just want to be part of that. Euphoria and celebration. So, as a professional athlete, my job after the World Cup was just to get back fit, get some games under my belt, and just look forward rather than looking back, and looking at the opportunities in front. And I just think it's really important as a person, as a player, to live in the present. And I just think it's a really key message in life. Don't look too far ahead. Don't look too back, and just be present and enjoy the journey and being in the moment.
Absolutely.
Well, and I mean, the 2 messages that come out for me in spades there. I mean, controlling what you can control, right? Taking those small bites and working on your rehab and to get back when you've had an injury setback. That's huge and a great lesson for everybody listening. But also, what really struck me was the gratitude. You're choosing a positive mindset over bitterness, right? And it would be incredibly easy to fall into bitterness and think, woe is me, what could have been, I should have been there, blah, blah, blah. But it's that gratitude because, you were part of an incredible group and had great success that season and came back from an injury. None of those things are easy, so great mindset.
I think that gratefulness was a huge part of my life. Really, no one has a perfect life. No one is on a straight line to a wonderful ending. That they will go through trials and tribulations, and every successful person you meet will have a story where they were in a tough place. I think the problem with nowadays is that a lot of people live their life through social media. They see an airbrushed life of perfection. And I think when you get to our age, I think you could have a bit more perspective. And I do worry for people who see people's lives on social media and they compare themselves to these people. And it's not a true reflection of where these people are, because everyone has something in their head sometimes that makes you sleep well or makes you sleep in a tough place. And you go to any room, there'll be insecurities with all these people, but it's the confidence, I suppose, to understand that we're all in the same boat. We're all human beings. We all have good times. We have bad times, and comparing yourself to other people, I think is doesn't help anyone, because those are Instagram stories. It's not real life. It really isn't.
Yeah, it's
Very
an
good
important
point.
message out there. Important message. So anyone watching this podcast, please don't compare your lives to Fitzy.
Not everyone has like antique art on the wall like that. That's probably
Okay. So moving on. So you played 10 finals for Wasps. You said the first one was against Saracens, where you got comprehensively beaten. And you said that was a humbling experience. What changed inside the group between that loss and then the run of trophies that followed?
Yeah, that was probably really important day for me as a player. Opposite me was one of the all-time great fly halves in Michael Liner.
Yeah.
A World Cup winner in '91 with Australia at Twickenham. So he was used to winning trophies on that pitch. I wasn't. I think Philippe Sella was in the centre. I think Francois Pinault was in the back row. We approached that final as a bit of a day out. We didn't really understand what finals were about. We rocked up and thought, if we play well, we've got a chance. I think for them, it was a bit of a defining game as far as the sort of Galacticos were concerned. And I was taught a lesson in how to manage a game at that level against one of the all-time greats. And funny enough, I'd been reading a book about mindset around that time, about the growth mindset and the fixed mindset, and how setbacks can sometimes go one way. You can either think yourself as a failure, or you can, learn from it and grow. And I'm really proud of the fact that after that, we didn't lose a final while we were at Wasps. So 99, we went back and we won it. 2000, we won the same tournament, and then we won, I think, 7 or 8 other finals in a row. Now, that's a combination of getting your best players on the field. So our S&C team and, Craig White and Gats and Sean and Paul Stridgen, these were serious operators. And I think they got the best players on the field at the end of the season, because we managed our season well with the resources we had. So there were times where we would rest players at crucial times. Gats was very good at giving, time off during the season, because the key was getting into those last 6 weeks of the season with momentum. I think it helped mentally having Sean on our side. I think he'd won 9 Challenge Cup finals with Wigan back in the day at Wembley. So he was a guy who's used to winning finals as well. You throw in the likes of Lawrence, who's a warrior competitor as your captain. His ability to find that emotional barrier or barometer in team talks before games. Not that we needed it, but he just picked the right words at the right time and got us to a level where your emotional level was just where it needs to be, without flipping over and doing something stupid on the field, and with a real clarity about guys knowing their roles and delivering on the biggest stage. And sometimes there's an intangible. You look across the change room and you see a Simon Shaw, a Joe Worsley, a Josh Lucy, and these guys are, world-class operators, and it just inspires confidence in the rest of the team. So yeah, very, very grateful for having those opportunities. And I don't think you realize at the time how special they are until you don't have them. So probably it's even more important to live in the moment and be grateful at that time, because once it goes very, very quickly. And I just think it's really important to enjoy those wins, whatever it is, in business, in sport, to take time to acknowledge sometimes when you've achieved, but obviously then to kick on and go again when the time comes, because I think there are other environments where you win things and you think it's done, but you've got to keep moving forward. You've got to keep improving. You've got to keep being innovative, inspiring, because the competition is coming to hunt you down. So yeah, and that's probably similar to what happened at Northampton. We won the Premiership in 2014, and I didn't notice it at the time, but maybe we did. Just think we'd made it, rather than pushing on and pushing the barriers of where we could get to. And that was probably a key difference between the two clubs.
Would it be fair to say the culture at Wasps, because you were all quite young at that time, and it seemed quite a social club? Do you think that was part of the success behind it?
I just think we grew up in London in the early 2000s. I think London is an incredible city. Being there in the early 2000s was just incredibly special. I think being in London as well, we allowed us just to be a very, small fish in a very big pond. It allowed us to socially go to a couple of pubs in Fulham and Wandsworth and Clapham and just be ourselves without getting too ahead of ourselves as well. But we had an amazing time off the field. And I remember Saracens took on our model from about 2009 onwards. They looked at how many of that Wasp team and Leicester before had played together en masse. And I think they worked out that both teams had 9 or 10 players who had played over 100 games together. Now, I think Saracens' model before was very much, we'll get the superstars in and that will be enough. But I think, and it'd be interesting to do a study on this to see that familiarization and the quantity of the people who stay together, those connections that you build up over time, and couple that with a learning mindset, you might not get success straight away, but I think if you stick with it and add some stardust along the way, a team grows up together. And I sort of see that at Northampton at the moment. I think they're in a great place. A lot of English players with a bit of stardust thrown in, good recruitment. And I think if that team sticks together for like the next sort of 7 or 8 years, I think they could be really, really successful. And I think Leicester had that with that great team in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think we had it for 5 or 6 years at Wasps. I think Saracens had it in the teens. And I think, whoever Bath or Saints can keep their squad together, I think they'll go really well. So I just think if a team grows up together, they go through huge amounts. So whether that's marriages and relationships and babies and godfathers, I think it just bonds a group really, really tightly together. And there is an intangible sometimes in close games that the tighter the group, they'll find a way to get it done. So I just think teams, whether that's in business or sport, that have real good connections, obviously with incredible talent and good leadership, is probably a good recipe for success.
Absolutely, yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Can I pick back up on something that I remember hearing at the time and speaking about afterwards, but I can't remember the specifics. And I think this is really, really important, not just for sport, but for business as well. That periodization that you mentioned in terms of having a certain amount of time on and had a bit of time off over the course of the season, which, seems obvious potentially now as more and more teams do it, but it was quite revolutionary then. Can you speak to that a little bit more in depth?
I think it was just how refreshing it was. As you well know, like this rugby season's I think it's too long in this part of the world. The guys go back, early July, 2 months of pre-season. They're into sort of 9-10 months of competition. They get 4 weeks off in May, June, and then they're back in. And it's a really hard profession, especially now with the physicality. So when Gatson Sean and Craig White, who I think is a brilliant practitioner, came in, they gave us the yearly planner, and it was like, well, you got 4 days off in October, you're going to have another 4 days off in December, you're going to have a week off in January, you're going to have another week off in March, and that is set in stone. Now, if we lose the week before, that is done. So it allowed, players to go back to their girlfriends, their wives, their families, and say, right, we can actually book a bit of time off in half term with the kids. We can go away. We can go to a nice, we can go to, take your girlfriend away. And it's just to getting the balance as a human being is really, really important. If you give everything to one area of your life, I think something else will screw up. I just think you need to. I think it was it Frank Dick? He gave this analogy that it's like driving on a motorway. If you stay in one lane too long, something bad's going to happen. So you need to shift between the three. So one lane is you, another lane is your family, your friends, that lane, and then the last lane is your career and your professional life. If you stay in one of those lanes too much, then something else is given up, and it's important to get that balance. And it really stuck to me how important that is. And even now, just getting a date in the diary to meet up with friends, and it might be 2-3 months time, but just to commit to something now, to something to look forward to give you that balance.
Yeah.
And going back to Wasps, they were amazing at that. And I think it was really refreshing that you could plan your season around your professional life, but also know that you had the balance of your family and your own time as well. And I think that paid huge dividends, huge dividends.
No, great intentionality there. And I think that, for listeners and business leaders out there, having that intentionality and looking to sort of manage the peaks and troughs of the workflow shows great dividends down the road. Not
Yeah,
done
because
enough.
otherwise you might create an amazing company, but if you're never at home and you don't see your kids grow up,
Yeah.
or you have issues with your relationship, then what's it for?
Yeah.
It has to be balanced. And maybe I'm being naive, but I just think it will help you in the long run, to try and find that balance. Easier said than done, I know. I just think for me it's really, really important.
For
Really
sure.
important. One of your questions that you sent over was like about the club and wastes and strays. And I remember we got this reputation about just picking up like random players at various points of the season. And it's probably the greatest quality that we're allowed to be. And I'm sure it happens in most clubs, but I just remember it was just being able to be yourself, whatever that looked like. And the only consideration was to come in, work hard, and be a good teammate. Now, it didn't matter where you came from, as long as you respected the club and just be authentic. And I just think being authentic is the most important thing you can be in life. I really do, because it is exhausting playing an act or being something you're not. And I just think being authentic allows you to understand where you are as a person and understand where other people are. Because as we talked about earlier, I just think energy and whatever field you're in is huge. And if you understand that not every day you're going to turn up, with 100%. And if you see someone else who isn't 100% and you are feeling great, then you can pick them up and you can bring the energy that day. If you're not authentic, then you can't quite read people, and you don't know where people are. And I just think authenticity is a really, really important life lesson if you're able to be that. I know some environments don't allow it, or they don't. They can be tough environments. You might have to act up, but I think invariably that I don't think there's much long-term success in those environments. I think people do burn out. I think they get exhausted, and I think being authentic allows you to be a lot more honest with yourself and your teammates or your colleagues.
Absolutely.
No, 100%. And that was my next question. But
Killed it. Doesn't matter though.
yeah, no, 100%. But let's delve into that a little bit more. I mean, it was very apparent to Liam and I have discussed this many times. From the outside looking in, what a tight bunch the Wasp group war at that period of time. And what do you think? I mean, you talked about allowing yourself, the group allowing you to be who you are and being authentic, but what other mechanisms were in place there that helped that group become so tight, keep such high standards, and be so competitive in your mind?
I think the coaching helped. They allowed us to lead. It's just, I suppose, it just allowed us to grow up. So and I probably learned this being a coach when I started. You think you've got all the answers, but invariably you haven't. And so when we started to have success, especially my position being fly half, you're out on the field having to make decisions under pressure. I was only able to do that in games because the coaching staff allowed me to do that in training, allowed me to do that in meetings, allowed us to have, sometimes quite uncomfortable conversations as a coaching group and senior players to thrash out, strategy or how it was going to be. But a real respect that we respect each other's opinions, but we'll walk out of that room united with one clear message about how we were going to approach a particular game or a final. And I'm very, very grateful to Gats that he allowed me to lead. I remember, he said to me, "King, I need you to be more vocal. I need you to talk more." So I remember in a session, it was, I remember talking to the players about part of training, and then Gats, like, he sort of interrupted me, and I went back to him. I said, I thought, Gats, you said I was in charge, not you," like that. I remember it vividly. And I think he quite liked it because it meant that I sort of taken on board what he was saying. And he sort of, went away with his little chuckle that he does. But I'm very grateful to him that he allowed me to become a leader in the group. And Lawrence was, the emotional leader. And together with myself, I felt, tactically, I sort of drove the team. along with some, fantastic players as well. And I think, as you well know, Fitzy, the best teams probably have 4 or 5 guys who all look after one of the domains, and then the captain is then allowed to push and prod people as needed. But you have a line out leader, you'd have a defense captain. I'd run the attack. Josh would run counter attack. There'll be a scrum leader, and then altogether that means that one person hasn't got all the responsibility, because that can be a tough place to be as well. So share out the responsibility. Everyone know their role. Everyone be accountable, and also be allowed to make mistakes as well, because that's another part of the growth mindset, is about learning from your mistakes. And this was another feature of my early coaching. I thought a perfect coaching session, there'd be no drop balls, no mistakes, but it's such a terrible mindset, because invariably you only get better by pushing the envelope, by being able to embrace mistakes, because it's the only way you get better, because the game is chaotic. There are scrums for a reason, because people drop the ball. And so if people aren't dropping the ball in training, then something's wrong. And I suppose there's 2 types of mistakes, aren't there? There's the concentration and lack of work rate, and I think they are acceptable to be called out. But a drop ball is a drop ball, and no one's trying to drop the ball. So that's probably one of my big learnings from when I started coaching. I wanted everything to be perfect, and then I've been a great coach. But no, it doesn't work like that.
A great point.
Yeah. So and talking about Sean Edwards as well, obviously he's a big part of this story and your story. You said he's one of the most important people in your professional life. What is it about Sean Edwards that seems to create a lasting impact on people all around him?
Yeah, he was really, really important for me. Like and I think probably his greatest quality is authenticity. Like, what you see is what you get. He toughened me up. There's no doubt about it, both physically and mentally. We couldn't have been more different, but we established a bond that's, very strong till this day. And he had an amazing ability, and still does, I'm sure, with France. I don't know quite know how he does it in French, but it'll be interesting to see. He had an amazing ability to push you incredibly hard, like almost the point of breaking you, not breaking you, but like to your absolute maximum. But it came from a real place of care. And so he'd push you and push you. You think, Sean, just, lay off. But he did it from a point of real, care and, almost love in some ways. I think he loved his players. And I remember him saying to me, or to the group, he said, look, I'm going to push you as far as I can. And the day I stop pushing you is the day I've probably given up on you. And it really resonated on me that it's almost a sign of respect, that he thinks there's more in you.
Yeah.
He'll push you. And when he couldn't push anymore, he's probably sort of given up on you. Like that's it. So then he almost wants to be pushed, because then he sort of still believes that there's a bit more to come out of you. But yeah, a great man who, I mean, fair play. Like, his winning record is just phenomenal. Grand Slams with Wales. I think he's got a French team that's going to compete at the next World Cup. I think he's won a Grand Slam with France now, didn't he? Did he not win a Grand Slam in 2023? I can't remember.
Yes, I believe he did.
But yeah, I still think, that quarterfinal against South Africa in 23 still hurts him. And I'm sure, 27 he'll be plotting, to go to, well, everyone gets the final and win it, because I just think this French team is special, and he will be a huge factor in whether they come out on top. But yeah, a great man, great friend, and I owe him a huge amount.
Is it right to say he's someone that you never want to let down because he cares
Absolutely.
so much?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you just like, he's almost like a father figure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he was, because, he had a tough upbringing in Wigan, became a serial winner with Wigan. I think he loved the sort of, the Wastes and Strays story at Wasps, because he sort of took them under his wing. His relationships with his players, his ability to get the best out of them, and to do that over such a long period. Yeah, huge respect for Sean. He now lives in the south of France, near Perpignan. And that all came about because we used to play Perpignan in the Heineken Cup. He loved it down there. It just so happens the Catalan Dragons play down in Perpignan. So I think he has a network of like-minded rugby leaguers, from the north of England that live down there. No, he's a great man, and I wish him all the best of the Six Nations.
How's his French, Alex?
I think with Sean, he'd give it a go.
Yeah.
And to be fair, he didn't speak too much when he was coaching us, but it was more his energy and his just his passion, really, and it just sort of transferred onto the players. But I think he's a good foil for Galtier and the coaching staff at France, because he is just so different, and I think his authenticity will shine through in France.
Yeah.
You need that balance of characters for sure.
Yeah.
In a group. So talking of France, at Clermont, you worked under Joe Smith and Vern Cotter early in your coaching career. Yeah. You said that they saw the game very much from an attacking side, understanding space, tempo, initiative. What did they teach you about building an attacking system that survives contact with pressure and that doesn't collapse when the plan gets disrupted?
So I joined Clermont in 2007 after 11 years at Wasps. And, our defence at Wasps was amazing. Our attack was pretty good, but Sean had always instilled in us that defence wins championships. And, the proof was in the pudding. So I went to Clermont and worked with two coaches that I'll be honest, I didn't know too much about them. But after 6 years there, certainly knew about them. Two serious operators in Vern and Joe, and they did see the game from a slightly different way, which for me was really refreshing. They're both coached in Super 14, I think it was called then back in the day, with Auckland. Joe was with Auckland, and Vern was with the Crusaders. So for me, it was so refreshing seeing just a different way of approaching the game. And it was about attack, and it was about appreciation of space. And Joe's big thing was upskilling his players to be able to play to that space, whether that's kicking skills, passing skills, vision, communication. And together with Vern, who always produced a pack of forwards that could produce enough ball for the backs to go to work. It was an incredible combination. And I feel very grateful that I had that time with Clermont. When the year I arrived, they lost the final in 2007. The year I played, I didn't play in the final, but we got to the final against Toulouse in 2008. We lost that one. In 2009, we lost the final against Perpignan. So in 2010, it was our fourth final in a row. We just lost three. They'd never won a championship in 100 years. To win that championship in 2010 was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in rugby, because it was like a liberation of the people. The party on the Sunday in the Place de Jordan in Clermont was extraordinary. I think we all know what Marcel Michelin is like on match day. The city was absolutely buzzing. So yeah, we finally nailed it. So what did Joe and Vern do? It was a perfect blend, really, of sort of Anglophile sort of like mindset, along with sort of the sort of French way of life. And they sort of coupled that really, really well. So yeah, real detail on the attacking plans, real accountability, incredible sort of brain power regarding strategy. We had a great 9 in Morgan Parra, in the tactician and Brock James, who I think is probably one of the most underrated fly halves that have played in the top 14. Throw in a bit of stardust in Rougerie and Bonaire, a bit of muscle in Jamie Cudmore in the second row, and it worked. And as you well know, Fitzy, like the margins between winning and losing are tiny, and sometimes winning a final becomes a bit of an art. And once you've lost three of them, there's a real need and want to get it right. And thankfully we did.
Is there much difference, Alex? I mean, I've experienced in this week in work dealing with, like French players compared to English players in terms of the way that you deal with them. Because to me, they're more direct in the conversations in France than compared to England.
Great question, Liam. So coaching in France was at the start really, really hard. It still was at the end, I'll be honest, like having to speak in two languages in the meetings. So my time at Montpellier, there was basically a third of the squad were French, a third of the squad were Afrikaners, and a third of the squad were sort of Australians, Antipodeans, Fijians. So you go into a meeting and you start speaking in French, The French guys would love the fact you were speaking French, but they probably wouldn't understand a thing you were saying. The Afrikaners and the Anglophones are probably switched off. Then you speak in English. Your brain after a meeting was absolutely frazzled because you're not quite sure whether you'd even got the message across. And the big word in business and in sport, I suppose, is clarity. What's the message? What are we going after? And if you leave meetings and you're not quite sure whether you've even got that message across, God knows what the people in the room are thinking. And that's the biggest challenge is the language barrier. Even though my French was pretty good at the end, there's always a nagging doubt in your brain. Have they actually taken on board what I'm saying? But on the reflection, I think coaches can speak too much sometimes, and not being able to, not being your first language, sometimes you allow them to talk, or you're a little bit more careful with the words that you chose to speak because you couldn't speak all the time. You picked and chose your moments, and I think that sometimes that's quite refreshing as a coach. And a wise man once said that as a leader, if you speak less and listen more, it's probably a good way of approaching your team because you're finding out more information about them rather than you just saying what you know. You're learning from them, and I try to take that on board about talking less and listening more. Probably doesn't come across on this podcast. I certainly approach that now with the teams that I work with.
I'll use that when I next go down to that part of the world, Alex, because like my French isn't very good.
Right.
I'm just listening, taking it on board.
Yeah. Alex, you
Right.
go on. I just wanted one follow-up question there. I mean, you touched upon something I think is really important. And with Vern and Joe, in terms of marrying the culture and the standards and systems that they wanted to input within the team. And I think that's an incredibly important point, working within a London club as opposed to somewhere in Limerick or Claremont or Sydney. Cultures are different, and you can be technically and tactically very astute, but you've got to marry that up with the history and the flow and the culture of where you are and the players that you're working with. I always thought Gats did a very, very good job of that, when he was in Ireland, moving to Wasps, then to Wales, etc. Can you speak more to that, what you've seen in moving to different places and how you've changed your messaging to make it more appropriate?
Yeah, so my time at Claremont, I was hugely out of my comfort zone. So I'd had 11 years at Wasps, living in London. At the start, I had friends at the club, and then gradually, as you're been somewhere so long, you just think everyone's in the same boat. And it wasn't until I went to a new club, out of my comfort zone, living in a flat on my own before my wife joined me, how lonely you can be in a new environment, and how important it is for players and staff who are there already and established with their friends and family, bring you on board. So everywhere I've been since, I've tried to put myself in the shoes of the new guy. So that was a huge thing about learning culturally about where players and people are in the community when they first join somewhere. And I think that was a real lesson for me about how to look after people when you join somewhere new. Vern was brilliant in Claremont in that respect because he played in a club called Lord back in the day. His French was absolutely fluent, and he was able to link the club in Claremont to the people of the town, how important it was that we represented their values, what they stood for, a real humbleness. The Auvergne, I don't know if you guys have been to the Auvergne, but it's in the middle of France. A lot of Brits just drive through it straight down to the south coast, but it is one of the most beautiful parts of France. You've got the Puy de Dôme, you've got the mountains, you've got history. Vern's messaging was very much embrace the history of the town. So his big messaging was around the Gauls and how they defeated the Romans in various parts of the Auvergne. And that was our messaging going into winning the championship in 2010. And enough, you win the Bouclier de Brennis, which is a shield. And, our thing was a big sword that they gave the man of the match to. And all these little things, all this messaging really, really helps. but it has to be done authentically. I mean, I'm sure, Fitzy, we've all heard stories of things where it hasn't quite hit home, and then it becomes a little bit inauthentic, and then it becomes a bit of a joke. And so it has to be done really, really well. And there's a real skill to it. And Vern and Joe were able to link the town and the countryside and where we were with the rugby club and the fans. And it was a really powerful message that year. And when it's done well, it's really powerful. When it's done badly, it can be counterproductive. So there's real skill in it.
For sure.
So moving on to Northampton, Alex, 2016, Northampton were doing great. One of the most potent attacks in the Premiership, top try scorers, title, Challenge Cup, but you left mid-season. Now, everyone looks and thinks, wow, they're going great guns. What's happened? I mean, what was that? Where was the pressure going, and where was, maybe rot's not the right word, but where was things creeping into the system that was making, one of their, the top coaches to leave? What was going wrong?
Well, we had an incredible success. They got to the final in 13, and then in 14 we won it. They made some incredible signings before I arrived in Alex Corbiasero, Khan Fortier, and George North had just come off, the arguably man of the tour in the Lions tour. So 2014 was incredible. We won the double. 2015 we actually topped the league, but lost to Saracens in the semi-final. 16 we finished 5th, and then sort of September 16, there was just a real disconnect in the coaching group, and just didn't seem aligned. And I think sometimes it's better to cut your losses and move away if it's not working. And that's not against any individuals. It's just the environment just wasn't working for me. And it was better that I wanted to find a new challenge. So we came to an agreement. I left. They went through a few tough years. And it seems now that they're back on the right footing. So look, I'm very grateful for that time. I learned a huge amount. I just think when you're not aligned with the people you're working with, sometimes it's best to step away and find a new adventure.
Were they shocked when you said that, Alex?
I think it was more a case of a situation that was becoming a bit untenable. So it was better for all parties, because the last thing that the players and the club wants is an environment where the coaches aren't aligned. So it's just, having some grown-up conversations. You understand it's not always going to be, roses and success. So yeah, some tough conversations, but you thrash it out and you come through it.
And was that lingering when you were winning the titles in 2014, 2015?
I think things are easier when you're winning, because but I think it's important to be true to your values, whether you win or lose. And come in on the Monday morning with the same mindset that you're going to get better, and not be too emotional, because otherwise you are putting everything into the result and not the process. And it is a bit of a cliche, but if you can get your week right, sometimes the game doesn't go for you. There are times you win a game, and a game you should have lost, and the games you lost that you should have won. And that's the reality of professional sport or any sport. But get the week right, and more times often the result will look after itself.
Fair enough. So Alex, you joined Wales in January 2023 as attack coach under Warren Gatland, who you worked with at Wasps. By the end of 2024, Wales had gone an entire calendar year without a win. When you're in a system like that where it's challenging, what happens to the conversations inside the coaching group, and what changes in how people communicate?
Like, it might surprise you, but we were incredibly tight. And some of those guys, no one's there now, and it's sad what's happened. But if we go back to when I got the job in January 23, so the Gats came in December, and I joined as attack coach along with Jonathan Humphreys, who was forwards coach, Mike Forshaw, defence coach. Jenks had been there for a while, and I absolutely loved 2023. Like, the World Cup in France was one of the highlights of my career. And we got to a quarterfinal against Argentina. and lost a game that arguably, we should have won, 13-6 at half time. And, we lost the game, and no complaints. It happens. On the back of the World Cup, 5 or 6 retirees. Yeah, you have some injuries. A week before the 24 Six Nations, Reece Zamet's gone to the NFL. And, you go from a squad that had been quite strong in the World Cup to a squad that wasn't quite the same level. And then you lose some tight games. We lost by 1 point to Scotland in 2024. We're winning at Twickenham with 9 minutes to go the week later. Ireland beat us convincingly in Dublin. We're beating France after 65 minutes in Cardiff, and then end up losing the game heavily. And then we lose to Italy on the last game when confidence is low, and Italy, play very, very well. So it was a tough Six Nations on the back of a World Cup that had gone pretty well. We then went to Australia and then lost 2 games out there, and then lost the 3 games in the autumn. But I will say, and I'll be totally honest, the coaching group stay tight, and it's a reflection of professional sport that when results don't go your way, there will be changes.
Mhm.
And that's what you sign up to. You have incredible highs, and you do have tough flows, and it can be incredibly tough because it's played out in the media, it's played out on social media. It's not a normal job in that respect.
Yeah.
It affects a lot of people in your life, your family, your friends. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has a passion, because you're part of a national team on the international stage. And when I left Wales, I think you can be angry and bitter, as we talked about earlier, or you can reflect and what can you learn. And since then, I've been back down to Wales, regarding my new venture, which I'm on at the moment. And I think it's really important in life to understand that being bitter and throwing your toys out the pram doesn't do you any good, because it might give you a temporary, euphoria. But the reality is that decisions were made, and you accept it, and that's the job you sign up for. And since then, I've been back to the WRU, and I've contacted people that I want to get involved in this new project of mine. And I think if I had approached the leaving Wales a little bit differently, I would have had that opportunity to go back and maybe, you know, uh, you know, form those relationships and links in a different venture. And I just think, burning your bridges at any given time is never conducive for the future, because decisions happen and you accept them, you get on with them, and understand that paths will cross again in the future. And it's important to keep your integrity and walk away with your head held high, because no one likes to make tough decisions, but invariably they do. And you've got to move on, because otherwise you get stuck in a rut. And you got to keep moving forward, as my mum used to say.
That's great advice, Alex. It's
Yeah.
gold, how to take feedback,
Yeah,
without, it's so good.
yeah.
Talking about when you took the job, obviously you're working in a national team environment. Is there anything that you've learned from working in a national team environment that perhaps you didn't know before you went in there?
Oh, great question. It's just very different to the club environment. The club environment's relentless. It's 40 weeks on the bounce, either playing, coaching, or you never get off the wheel. International rugby is just the intensity of it. Playing in 80,000 seater stadiums, the scrutiny of each game, the detail that you have to go into, is how fast it all happens. I think that's probably the biggest learning, and how important the preparation is going in. The margins are just become even tighter, because everything's just going up a level. So you have to be, ready to go. So the times in between camps were very much the recharge, and being able to go back into camp with the energy and the preparation and done. As far as the game goes, it's just better, just higher quality. Just how important each moment is. That's probably the biggest difference. How important each moment is. Something you would get away with at a club level, you wouldn't get away with at international level. So just being on it more in training, the detail, the analysis, it just lends itself to more scrutiny and more intensity.
So Wales is even more because it's a national sport. It's a goldfish bowl. Right. So how did you as a coach help deal with the pressure, not only for the coaching team but for the players? If you're playing a big international.
Yeah, you try and alleviate it from the players. You try and take it on yourself. As I said, the coaching group stay tight. I cannot fault anyone in that group. It'd be very easy to work in silos and everyone look after their own little kingdom. But
Yeah.
it wasn't. I'm still good friends with all the staff, and yeah, the pressure does come on. And I'll be honest, there are times that I struggle not to bring it home with me. And I talked earlier about being present and in the moment. And there'll be times that I'll be, you know, spending time with my family, but my mind would just race back to something, and my family would be like, "Dad, you're right," and I'll be like, "Yeah, I'm fine," and you try and mask it, but you were thinking about a meeting or something that you had to speak to a player about something, and that was probably, if I could go back and do one thing, it would be better at not bringing the game home with me, and I think that's probably not the burnout, but certainly the thing I found the hardest was not taking the game home with me. And I think for a lot of coaches, they will say the same. I worry for a few coaches, if I'm honest, because I think blokes traditionally mask things. They keep things in their head. They might tell a good mate, but it's a tough job. And I think you've got to go in with your eyes open.
Yeah.
But there's not very much support for coaches or support staff because the pressure is there, no doubt about it. And people sometimes handle that in different ways. But I think the world is a lot more open to honest conversations about mental health and pressure.
Yeah. Sorry. I mean, I was going to say, did you help each other? Did it make you tighter? So if you were feeling the pressure, you'd speak to each other, or
Yeah, you did. And sometimes you go for if you go for a pint of Guinness and you chew the fat and you get away from rugby for a while. And yeah, I'll be honest, Wales were very good at looking after the staff, and Gats especially was very good about switching off at a certain time in the evening and going down to the bar. But it's done in the right way. As I said, I can't speak highly enough of the staff. Absolutely brilliant, all the departments, and I wish them all the success this year. I think it'll be tough. I think there's a couple of games they can really go after. I wish Steve and his coaching group all the best because, as I said, life moves on, and there's some really, really good people in that organisation.
And you couldn't really escape from it going to the bar because someone would be collaring you about the game in the bar. I expect it as well.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true.
You say it's easier said than done to compartmentalize, those different aspects of your life. Is there anything you think that would help that, or advice that you could give to somebody in sport or business to help them through that situation?
I think probably understand you're not alone on this. I think sometimes you think, oh, is it just me? Is it me who hasn't got all the answers? Is it me who's struggling? And I think probably communication, probably having someone in your life who's probably not in the rugby environment, whether it's a mentor, just to be able to bounce ideas off. So you've got a bit of a release. And I think everyone needs it. Whether you're a successful CEO in a business, I think they'll always have someone who they can bounce ideas off or go with a worry, not being judged. And I just think everyone needs one of those. I mean, it could be an old friend, it could be his dad, it could be your brother, it could be someone completely unrelated to sport, just so they've got someone who you can have a chat with, say, I'm worried about this, what do you reckon? To get another perspective, because I think it's that feeling of isolation, feeling you're on your own, got no one to talk to. I think that's when the trouble really sets in. But I just think these are really sort of human characteristics of being a human being. Doubt, worry, stress, pressure, whatever walk of life you're in, having a mentor or someone who you trust, pick up the phone and say, right, if you got 5 minutes, I think it's really, really important. I listened to a few podcasts myself, and there's a guy called Simon Sinek, I'm sure you've heard of, who I really, really like, and he gives these little snippets of wisdom, and it's just now and again it's good to. And he came out with that one, so I've sort of taken that one on board. And whenever I'm in an environment now, there's a couple of people who I who I call up if I'm not sure, but if I've got all the answers. No one has all the answers. And you hope that, by talking to people that you can find a way together.
Good advice. So you've talked about using role models from outside of rugby, Aaron Smith's passing, Steph Curry's shooting, Tom Brady's work ethic to show players what elite fundamentals look like. What is the actual behaviour you're trying to shift in a player when you're using these kind of examples? What are you hoping they stop doing and start doing?
I think the key, like those examples you gave, is how hard those players work at their game. Like, those guys aren't good by accident. They are good because of the relentless pursuit of excellence that they bring mindset-wise every day to their craft. And I think whatever domain you're in, sport, business, I just think you're just very, very good at doing those things over and over again because you practice them on a daily basis. And I think the mindset to get better every day is easier said than done. The human body sometimes wants comfort and it wants certainty. Well, that's not always possible. And I think the line of trajectory that all those guys are on, there would have been plateaus, there would have been dips in their form, but their ability to work through that and become the best they can be is a mindset that they need to bring every day. And, players now, I just think that resilience to come through tough times. We talked about resilience earlier, the urgency and desire to get better every day is crucial. And all those practitioners will exhibit those characteristics. So I think, my son now he's bidding to be a rugby player, and it's not just going to happen. It takes incredible amounts of practice, the right practice, being open to feedback. As I said, having people in your life that you respect and can teach you life skills are really, really important. So I think for any young player, they just need to work incredibly hard at the craft and understand that the fundamentals are so important for them succeeding, but also celebrating what their point of difference is as well. I think sometimes we can look at what don't you do right, and I just think it's really important that we embrace people's point of difference, and everyone's good at something. And I think the best educators, the best coaches bring out and really make those athletes flourish. And I think being part of a team allows different people to bring those different skill sets. So you don't want a boardroom in business full of the same personalities. You'll want a closer. You'll want someone who's good on the detail. You'll want someone who's good at the pitch. And if you line all those people together, you have a pretty formidable combination. And it'll be the same in any sports team. And it's that getting that balance of their skill sets, which allows the team to flourish.
For sure. I also think, to build on what you were saying there, that when you've got a young player and you're celebrating those differences, not to be so intent in terms of having them mimic somebody they're competing with or someone they're looking up to, developing those talents that they've got. Yes, looking at other people and trying to build those different skill sets into their repertoire, but not trying to be carbon copies of somebody else.
No, I think that comes down to the authenticity again. Don't try and be someone you're not. You've reached this level because you've got a inane talent along with hard work, but understand that the talent's only going to take you so far. And everyone's bodies are different. So if you're trying to goal kick like Johnny Wilkinson, your body might not be able to. There are certain principles in place. You head down, get your body weight through the ball, but it doesn't have to be a carbon copy of one of the greats. The younger sibling is usually further ahead in their sporting development at a young age because they are competing on a daily basis with an older sibling.
Yeah.
So my daughter, she's getting wrestled. She's playing cricket and football with my son in the garden, let's say, and competing. And then she goes up against another 10-year-old girl, and it's easy.
Yeah.
So she's almost overtraining at home. So when she goes into her own age group, she's used to someone a bit bigger, a bit stronger, a bit faster, and it's the most perfect training possible for her. And I think there's been studies done in Australia in the outback because they haven't got enough players, say under 18s, to make a team, they'll throw in a 13, a 14, a 15-year-old into the team. And therefore, those guys are getting incredible exposure to a higher level compared to, say, a 13-year-old in the town who's playing under 13.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's incredible.
Your
So,
son sounds
I
like a
love stuff
natural
like that.
coach, Alex, already. Like he's training your daughter in pressure environments.
Exactly, I know. She doesn't know, though. She just thinks she's amazing.
Yeah, I know. But going
She'll
on,
dance my son.
speaking about pressure, obviously, rugby's a pressurized environment and people are fascinated by decisions you make under pressure. As a fly half, you're basically the playmaker. Everyone's trying to get you.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to stop you
Yeah.
making the plays. You at various points coached some amazing fly halves like Danny Cipriani, George Ford. What is it about? What do you think that makes someone be able to make decisions under pressure between someone that can't?
Yes, it's a great question. I suppose, well, all those players you've talked about, they're at a certain level. And probably two things, probably the leadership, having the confidence from the coaches to be able to make decisions, and being able to make decisions in training, off the field, good relationship with the coaches to make sure you're on the same page regarding how you see the game, and also the real clarity in your head about how things evolve. And I think your training has to reflect the game. So you've got to put your players in positions where they've got cognitive stress in training. Because there's no doubt that the more situations you go through as a playmaker, the easier it is to make the better decisions you'll make because you've seen these scenarios before. And I think fly half is one of those positions where you do get better the more rugby you play, because you've seen those scenarios before. So probably, I'd say early 30s is probably peak age for a fly half, because it's a bit like, it's like watching a scary movie for the first time. You're a bit shocked. Whereas if you use the analogy of scary movies like a blitz defense, the first time you play against it, well, you're all over the place. But if you know the scary moments coming in a movie like you do in a blitz defense, well, then you can prepare for it. You can hold your depth a little bit. You can kick it a little bit more to change the backfield. And I just think it's about understanding as many different scenarios and situations as possible. And I think that maturity that you can gain and experience as a fly half is invaluable. And what I do worry a little bit is for young players now in academies, sort of 18, 19, 20, especially in those playmaking positions, who don't play enough rugby in those crucial years because they are part of an academy system that doesn't allow them to play 25, 30 games in a year. They may be playing 8 or 9 games, getting massive in the gym, developing their skills, but they're not learning management of games, management of their seasons, because the system doesn't allow them to play enough rugby. And I just think those years are crucial as a playmaker. Maybe it's improved, but certainly my experience of that was that certain positions, there's certain age groups that aren't playing enough rugby. And it'd be better for a fly half to go out on loan to a club where he's playing 20 games a year, because he's then learning all the time. And it's a bit of an analogy that, it's like a batsman. You can be the best player in the nets, but you've got to get out into the middle. And it's the same for a fly half and a scrum half. You've got to be, making decisions constantly, and that allows you then to make best decisions in the future, because you all make mistakes. I mean, it's fascinating now looking at Ireland's and Pendergast's, fly half this weekend against France. He's still a young fly half, and everyone's comparing him to Sexton, but Sexton had 12 years in that jersey, and Sexton, the player that he finished, is not the player that started. And I think we need to give these players time to be able to mature and develop. And he's now got 2 years, Pendergast, before the next World Cup, which will give him 20 games along with the other fly halves to get enough experience. And I just think allowing players to lead, allowing being aligned with your fly half, and putting them in environments where they're constantly making decisions, I think is crucial for their development.
I mean, how did you do it, Alex, as a player? Like making decisions under extreme pressure, what would be your mindset?
Well, have a good pack is always a good start.
Yeah.
A scrum half, if you put it on a plate. And no, I think game understanding is probably quite an underrated skill. Understanding how things fit together, and that could just be an appreciation of base as far as backfield, and because every defense has got its weakness, and understanding where those weaknesses are to then be able to you manipulate the defense rather than the defense manipulating me. So, very basic example: if they've only got one in the backfield, but they've got 14 in the front line, I'm going to tire my forwards out pretty quickly if I'm expecting to run through a brick wall. If I'm putting the ball in front of them and stressing their fullback, that means they might have to drop one or two other players into the backfield, which might create space in the front line. And it's that constant, nuance between front line and backfield, because kicking can sometimes be seen as a negative, but certainly it can dictate your attacking game because it will change what a defensive system does. So, yeah, I think game understanding is probably a huge area where fly halves can understand what they can do to manipulate the team's defense, understanding why speed of ball is so important, understanding where to attack and how you can take that advantage away from, say, a blitz defense. Because what a fly half wants, and you guys, I don't need to teach you this, guys, but maybe for your listeners, they want time and space. And if you take that away from a fly half, it can become very stressful, very congested. So my theory was, how can I take the pressure off my team and reapply it on the opposition? And that was always my sort of model. And if if pressure's not being applied, then I've got time to play to space as I want. If pressure's being applied to me, how can I reapply it? And that might be a kicking game, but so yeah,
Yeah, and you
it's
can only apply those so by pressurized training and
yeah,
creating a psychological safe environment where people could make mistakes. That's
definitely,
how players flourish. The
yeah.
only way, what you're saying is, like when you're on the field, that you're not feeling the pressure because you're just concentrating on what you've got to do, basically,
Yeah.
the plays.
Yeah, I think the military have that adage, don't they, that your performance is only under pressure. It always comes down to the level of your training,
Yeah,
which is huge in all walks of life.
yeah,
I also think it's important to have people outside you as well who are helping you.
yeah,
So I think you can be really demanding of people around you as well to feeding back information. So then it's not just you who's having to take everything on board. So I was pretty harsh on, not harsh, but I was pretty demanding of players outside me to give me information to allow me to make better decisions, without a doubt.
Well, and I think you touched upon it as well there in terms of the difference probably when we were coming up through the grades as to young players now having enough opportunities to play and put those things that they're learning and developing and being able to read the pictures as it's unfolding, because that game situation is different and more challenging than the training pitch, as much as we try and make it similar. So you've built attacks across 4 countries, worked inside club and international systems, experienced title wins and difficult exits, a lot of highs and lows. You're now transitioning out of coaching into business. Tell us what's next for Alex King and what kind of environments you're looking for at this stage of your career.
Yeah, so I've set up a consultancy business, and I'm enjoying it. It's completely different, obviously, probably better work-life balance, but also quite daunting as well, going out on your own. But I'm trying to, well, I am working with companies connected with sport. So I've got myself involved with an AI company, and I think there could be it's a really exciting time, as in being able to use this technology to help the well-being of players and anyone connected to the game to drive high performance. So yes, it's exciting. It really is. I've only just really sort of scratched the surface, but I'm really hoping that the 30 years in high level elite performance, and there'll be some transferable skills that I can move over. And it's interesting now being on the other side. So I was always on the performance side, and was paid on the back of the sport being commercialized, and it's now fantastic to stay within sport but being on the other side. So it's really interesting.
And so many crossovers from, just in this conversation is coming through on spades, the journey you've been on, being such a talented player, being such a talented coach, being in so many different environments, those been the thesis of what Liam and I have been discussing while we built out the business. And there's so many things that are transferable from sport into business. So wishing you every success and we'll be excited to watch your journey.
Yeah.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah.
Thank you, Liam.
Yeah, it's a pretty unbreakable system you got there. So look forward to analysing it. But we haven't finished yet. I've just got 5 quick questions.
Yes, right.
Quick as you can. The biggest difference between a team that wins the finals and a team that loses them?
I think we need your best players on the field, and also you need experience as well. I think you need an understanding of how important every moment is. Easier said than done. Don't get caught up in the emotion of it. Because if I knew the answer, I'd write a book on it. But I was very lucky to be part of some teams with a relentless drive to win. But the margins are tiny. I suppose if you don't win a final, just make sure you learn from it and come back the year later, because the amount of times that happens is amazing. You lose one final, then you win the year later. And I think it comes down to experience and understanding what wasn't quite right on the day you lost to make sure you get it right the year later.
Okay, and the next one, I think you will answer this one. What I'm thinking is that you've answered already. A coach has helped you shape the game, helped you how you see the game, and one specific thing that they did that you carried with you throughout your whole career.
Yeah, I mean, it would be Sean. He changed me as a rugby player and ultimately changed, my life, because if I hadn't been a player, would I have got the opportunities and coach? I don't know. All I could say was his relentless drive to make you better, but from a caring environment, was a real skill. And really, really important person in my life.
Okay, and without naming names, what's the hardest conversation you've ever had as a coach, and what was it about?
It would have been the 2023 World Cup squad selection, and having to phone players up on the back of that to say that they hadn't made the squad. It was unfortunate. I never made a World Cup as a player, and I was given that news twice, and it wasn't easy. But one thing I have learned regarding bad news, I think sometimes it's how it's done rather than what the message is. And I think if you treat them with respect and you are as honest as you can be regarding the messaging, I think people can handle that. So phoning players up to say they weren't going to the World Cup was tough.
How would you take the emotion out of that?
I tried to empathise as much as I could, and it was tough. I'm not lying; it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
But that is part of the job, and uncomfortable conversations happen. Be respectful, answer any questions they've got, and be there for them if they want to follow up call or meet up whenever they're ready. Since then, I've spoken to all the players involved, and you understand that it's part of the job from their side as well, and it hopefully puts me in good stead for later on in life when I have to make hard decisions again, to realise you've done it before, and you'll have to do it again.
Yeah, they don't come much harder than that one. And something you believed early in your coaching career that you no longer believe?
Well, I think I mentioned this earlier as well, so apologies for doubling up. But probably that I had all the answers as a coach. You don't. And it's not, I don't think players expect you to have all the answers. I think what they expect you to have is a relentless drive to make them and the team better, an openness to ideas, a mutual respect, and commitment to high standards that you live daily, that in balance with what you're preaching as well. So what you're teaching, what you're coaching.
And the last one, I mean, at Watts you played with probably a bit stereotyped here, tough forwards like Delalio, Worsley, Simon Shaw. If you missed a tackle, who would you least likely to justify that missed tackle to? It's a bit stereotypical, really.
They're all legends, those boys. The one you've missed off the list, and I did tackling practice with every week, was Trevor Leota. I don't know if you remember him. So whenever I missed a tackle, he used to find me on a Tuesday afternoon and said, "Right, you're coming with me to do some practice." So yeah, my technique soon perked up when Trevor got hold of me.
That's
Is
a
it a
real
true
incentive to
story?
get better.
A true story about him not being able to do contact at certain points of
Yes.
Wasp.
His first training session, he marmalised Kenny Logan, which everyone was pretty happy about, really, because it sort of put Kenny in his place. But yeah, we soon realised that if Trevor was let loose on a Tuesday and Thursday, we wouldn't have many players ready for the weekend. So I'm definitely glad he was on my team rather than against me. But he was an absolute icon of the club, and someone who's on the WhatsApp group, and you would get a random message and video from him now and again. But he was an absolute legend of a bloke.
Yeah.
Absolute legend.
Great
What a
player, great
tackler.
man.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for your time. This was a conversation about what actually happens inside systems when they work and what happens when they don't. Really appreciate your candor and your honesty and the nuggets you've dropped there. And this is what we're here to understand. Appreciate you joining us on the business end. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Cheers, boys. Lovely to see you.